Every new rider wants to modify their motorcycle. It's basically inevitable. You buy the bike, you ride it for a week, and before you know it, you're shopping online at 2 a.m. convincing yourself that what this machine really needs is a 125 dB exhaust, a tail tidy, and some brightly anodized nonsense shipped directly to your door from AliExpress. The unfortunate truth is that most new riders modify their bikes completely backwards. They spend money on noise because their Ninja 500 sounds brutal with a straight piped exhaust. Or they get some cheap cosmetic farkles before actually considering the stuff that makes the bike better to ride. So today, I'm going to walk you through the best beginner motorcycle mods, the real stuff that I recommend, the upgrades that protect the bike, improve the way it behaves on the road, and genuinely makes it nicer to live with. Because if you're going to start bolting stuff on your bike, there's a right way to go about it. Let's begin. Now, if you take nothing else away from the video, let it be this. Tires are the single best modification you can make to your motorcycle, full stop. Now, we recently made a video talking about modifications where people said tires were mods, they're consumables, but listen, changing the rubber on your motorcycle affects every single aspect of your ride. They influence how the bike turns, how it brakes, how stable it is mid-corner, and most importantly, how confident you are as a rider, because it gives you the feeling. It's the feedback. Confidence is key when you're starting out, and it directly correlates with how much trust you have in your bike. A good set of tires makes trusting your motorcycle that much easier. Something you might not know as a new rider is that the tires that come on your bike from the factory, especially if you bought it brand new, are not that great. Even if they're the same make and model that you can buy off the shelf, manufacturers will use lesser versions for their new bikes. We experienced this on our Yamaha R9 that we gave away last year that was supposed to have a pretty solid spec of Bridgestones on it. I tested them on track and they were garbage. Sometimes they're spec'd for longevity instead of grip. Sometimes they have much thinner surface rubber that wears in half of the time as aftermarket versions. Now look, regardless of your bike or the tires it came with, there's almost a guarantee that new tires will completely open your eyes to how compromised it was prior. The profile of the tire has an immense impact on the way a motorcycle behaves. A more aggressive profile that has a sharper V shape will tip in quicker and feel more responsive. And the tire compound is crucial as well. A softer tire provides more grip at the sake of longevity. And these days, any solid sport touring tire is going to strike a perfect balance of grip, operating temperature, longevity, and water dispersion. Bridgestone S22s or Michelin Pilot Road 6s are pretty much always a safe bet for anything sport-oriented for road riding. But regardless of what you choose, upgrading your tires will do more for your riding experience than almost anything else on this list. You spent thousands of dollars on a motorcycle, and it all comes down to 2 patches of rubber about the size of a credit card. Think about that for a second. Oh, also, pro tip, make sure they're at the correct PSI. I can't tell you how many times someone tells you their bike handles poorly and the freaking thing's at 12 PSI. Air them up! Now, listen closely. You ready? Come in. You're going to drop your motorcycle. It's not maybe. It's not an if you're unlucky. You will drop it. And those of you who are commenting saying, I've never dropped a bike, I don't believe you. It's not true. I drop a bike at least once a year. And look, I am a professional, so to speak. I have to move motorcycles around all the time. But hey, everyone's going to drop it. The good news is that it will probably be minimal. Maybe it's that fabled garage tip over, or during a tight U-turn in a parking lot with many pedestrians standing by gawking and laughing at you, or maybe because you forgot to put your kickstand down. It happens to every single new rider at least once. You're not alone. More good news. The damage is typically inconsequential if you've kitted it out with some nice crash protection on your bike. We're talking frame and axle sliders, case covers, or maybe crash bars if you're rocking one of those baby ADV bikes that are all the rage nowadays. These parts are not glamorous, they're not sexy, and they definitely won't make your bike any faster or cooler, but they can save you a lot of time and money the first time your bike decides to take an unexpected nap. Without these parts, a simple low-speed drop can actually end up costing you a pretty penny or maybe have you call in a tow truck. you'll end up with scratched or cracked fairings, bent levers, or God forbid, a cracked engine case. The only thing worse than a silly mistake is a silly mistake that ends up costing you hundreds or thousands of dollars in replacement parts. But with some sliders or case savers, a silly drop might just mean that your ego is more damaged than your bike, and that's exactly what you want. Now, this is a talking point that I see all the time. Before you even think about upgrading your suspension, you need to set up the suspension you already have, because chances are it's not set up for you. Most motorcycles leave the factory configured for a generic test rider, someone who weighs somewhere around 160 to 180 pounds, rides moderately, lives in a perfectly smooth Japanese or European fantasy land where roads don't have any potholes big enough to swallow a Mini Cooper, and they're also somewhere between 5'8" and 5'11". They're not set up for husky, corn-fed boys riding in the decaying urban infrastructure of a post-industrial Midwestern city. Because the bike hasn't been set up for you, it might feel too soft, too stiff, dive under braking, or vague on the side of the tire. It's likely not solely because of cheap factory units, it's just not set up for you. I can't tell you how many times I kind of chuckle to myself when I watch bike reviewers talking about a bike handling badly and the suspension isn't set up, or the tire PSI is wrong, or they don't have proper rubber on it, or they have improper technique. This happens all the time. Now, the crucial one that you want to think about is sag. You can check sag, which is how much the suspension compresses under your weight. If the sag is off at the rear, the bike's geometry is off, and then everything else suffers as a result. This is a huge topic with a lot of intricacies to it, so I highly encourage you do further research on this. But from there, if your bike has any other degree of adjustability, dialing in your preload, rebound, or compression with the help of a service tech or a suspension guru will make a massive difference. But also, this stuff isn't rocket science. When it comes to the giveaway bikes, all I do is set the preload sag, and then I just set the suspension per the manual, and then we're ready to rip, and the bike always feels solid. Also, if you're on the larger side, let's say north of 200 pounds, oftentimes you're better off just getting your stuff re-sprung for a heavier weight. You can throw preload all day at your suspension, but if you don't have any movement in the suspension because you've preloaded it to death, you need stronger, stiffer springs that work for your weight. Now, that's going to fix your handling woes without necessitating an entire replacement. Make sure you properly set up what you have first, because you might be surprised how good budget suspension can be when it's working properly and you have proper inputs.
Why does filming motorcycle content feel like you're prepping for a NASA launch? You've got multiple cameras, lenses, batteries, ND filters, mounting hardware, and different microphone setups, more moving parts, and more failure points. The Osmo 360 and DJI's ecosystem simplifies everything. This can be a true one-camera setup. You mount it up on your helmet or your bike, hit record, and you're filming 360 degrees in less than a second. No reshoots because of lost footage or missing audio, and because you're working with full 360, you can just go back later and actually pick your angles and fine-tune the look. DJI's motion blur feature lets you add that cinematic streaking effect to your footage after the fact, which makes everything feel faster and more dynamic without needing perfect camera settings on the ride. The DJI Mic Mini, one of my favorites, pairs perfectly with the Osmo 360 for the most painless audio interface I've ever experienced. The mic attaches with a small magnet so you can pin it in your helmet for on-the-bike commentary, or stick it on your shirt for direct piece to camera. If you want pro-level footage without turning your whole ride into a full production studio or weighing down your backpack with a bunch of heavy camera equipment, you gotta check out the DJI Osmo 360 and their whole ecosystem. Hit the link below to learn more about the camera and how you can streamline your setup with DJI. Thanks to them for the support in today's video. Now let's get back into it.
Now, once your suspension is dialed and it's sitting perfectly under your weight, you've got nice tires, you've got crash protection, you're doing pretty good. But the next step is to fine-tune or modify your touch points or ergonomics. Because if you don't fit your bike, you're either too tall, too short, or allergic to the rock-hard stock seat, you're not going to have the comfort or control you deserve on your motorcycle. Luckily, most of these mods are cheap and straightforward installs. Adjustable levers are one of the easiest upgrades you can make, and being able to fine-tune the reach to the levers make braking and clutch work feel way more natural, especially if you have smaller or abnormally large hands. Adjustable levers even come in clutch, see what I did there? When swapping between cold and warm weather gloves. Tank grips also pay dividends. The ability to hold onto the tank with your legs and core instead of supporting yourself entirely with your arms improves your comfort, reduces fatigue, and it improves your control. If your weight is on your wrists, it's going to negatively influence your inputs. And you don't want that when you hit a bump mid-corner and drop your whole body weight onto the throttle tube. It's not going to be a good time. If your reach of the controls is too short or too long, consider an aftermarket handlebar. Maybe some wicked mini ape hangers to impress the brothers at the Hogs Hideout Biker Bar. Small incremental changes to handlebar position create noticeable improvements. An aftermarket seat is another one of those very unglamorous mods that no one will ever complain about spending money on. If you're short, you can get lower seats. If you're tall, you can get tall seats. If you're an average sized rider but you want to increase your longevity on the bike, a seat with higher quality materials and softer padding can be a lifesaver. Most of these mods just simply don't make your bike cooler, but if you're more comfortable, you're going to ride more and have better control and a more intuitive experience. Owning a motorcycle can come with many inconveniences, challenges that were solved with the advent of the automobile. But cars are lame, motorcycles are cool. Embrace the freedom and mitigate these challenges with some worthwhile quality of life mods. These are the things you don't immediately think of, but end up appreciating nearly every single time you ride. Battery tender leads are cheap, takes about 5 minutes to install, and saves you from the soul-crushing click of a starter that's too low on juice to crank over the engine. If you don't ride your bike as often as you like or deal with poor weather conditions, a battery tender is essentially non-negotiable. Many bikes come with USB-C charging ports these days, but if yours does not, that's also an easy upgrade that can save your behind during long days in the saddle when you need to keep the GPS to keep you heading in the right direction. Is luggage a modification or accessory? Who can say? I'll leave you to debate that in the comments. But I will say some nice luggage is also mandatory in my humble opinion if you want to use your motorcycle for more than just a weekend toy. Sometimes aftermarket mirrors are also a necessary modification as well, not just because stock mirrors are ugly and kind of look like bug antennas, but because the factory units shake or vibrate like crazy, or they can't be positioned in a way that actually lets you see behind you. A good set of mirrors can make your bike look a little prettier and be safer at the same time. But that's not the only way to make your bike more attractive. Now we can finally talk about the stuff that everyone wants to do first. Make your bike look cooler. And hey, there's nothing wrong with that. Motorcycles are emotional. You want them to look special and unique. The first rule for aesthetic mods, or farkles, if you will, are don't go overboard. Things can get out of hand really quickly. There's a lot of people out there trying to extract your money for cheap parts. You have cheap anodized CNC parts with random colored bolts, fake carbon fiber, rim tape, LED underglow. Before you know it, your motorcycle looks like some sort of circus attraction instead of a tastefully appointed bike. A simple tail tidy is a great place to start. It cleans up the rear of the bike, it gets rid of the big plastic fender, and makes the bike look a lot more purposeful. Will you get some mud and water sprayed onto your back when you ride in the rain? Potentially, but it just comes with the territory. Don't think too much about it. Get a tail tidy from a reputable brand that retains DOT required lighting. Just zip tying your license plate to the underside of your fender is asking to get pulled over and issued a fix-it ticket. If you have an ADV bike, some bark busters are both functional and aesthetically pleasing. Minimalistic LED turn indicators can do the Lord's work if swapped for those clunky orange blobs that many Japanese motorcycles came equipped with for, decades. But again, you get what you pay for. The cheapest generic Chinese parts are going to be harder to install, they're not going to work well, and generally look worse than OEM. So stick with the good stuff to ensure the mod is worthwhile. On that note, it's also worth reminding you guys that mods don't increase the value of your motorcycle. More often than not, actually, they negatively affect it. Don't ever expect to see an ROI on these kind of personal enjoyment items. It makes it sound like I'm talking about a fleshlight, but I'm not. Speaking of bad ROI, let's talk about performance mods. Now, this is where many beginners go off the rails. You don't need to spend $1,000 to gain 4-wheel horsepower. That's really stupid. In reality, what you spend versus what you get out of it rarely justifies the cost. Again, not considering personal fulfillment. If the pursuit of power makes you happy, then go for it, I guess. If you want to do a full system, flash the ECU, do the crazy top-end kit, whatever, go crazy. But most of the time, it is a superfluous endeavor, and you're usually better off just buying a faster motorcycle. A slip-on exhaust is about as far as I would ever take it on a street motorcycle, personally. It sounds better, it looks cool, saves some weight, doesn't necessitate a tune or an ECU flash. Will it make more power? Probably not, but it'll offer a little bit more personality to the experience depending on your bike. The Aprilia V4, for example, a slip-on exhaust dramatically made it louder, which is awesome. It also didn't need an ECU flash, which is great. If you do want or need to change the way your bike makes power, an ECU flash will make a noticeable difference, not just by increasing peak power, but improving how the bike makes power. Better throttle response, removing dead spots, and smoothing out fueling. It can make a bike feel better and more fun to ride. I'm a big fan of them. Now, is this necessary on a beginner bike? Probably not. Unless you're building a dedicated track bike, doing anything to the air filter or deleting parts for weight reduction is pretty frivolous as well. Bikes are already pretty darn light. Don't worry about it. The bigger point is simple. The bike isn't the bottleneck. It's you and your own skills at this point. If you want your bike to become faster, you have to become a better rider. The rider mod is the ultimate performance upgrade. Now look, don't modify your bike to turn it into something it is not. Modify your bike to make your experience better so you will have more fun, and that's going to result in you being a better rider. Thanks for making it to the end of today's video. As always, I appreciate it. I will catch you in the next one. Fact: former US President Andrew Jackson's parrot was kicked out of his funeral for swearing. Goodbye.